So it's the end of 2024, and you're trying to decide, is it finally time to upgrade your old Intel-based MacBook Pro and replace it with a new M4-based MacBook Pro? How much faster can it be? How will it change your daily life? And is it worth your hard-earned money? Well, let's find out by going through a number of regular everyday tasks like installing and opening apps, web browsing, and then check out some performance using benchmarks, and we'll test some video editing and some gaming and some Xcode. But also I want to cover just a number of things that might be different moving from an old Intel-based MacBook Pro over to an M4 or M series-based MacBook Pro. Now these are just two MacBooks, and whatever test results we get between these two devices is going to be different compared to the devices that you actually have. On the left side, we have one of the fastest MacBook Pros ever released of the Intel era. This is the 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro with the i7 processor. It's a 6-core processor, has 16 gigabytes of memory, and it has a dedicated AMD 5300 Radeon graphics card inside. On the right side, I have the brand new 2024 M4 MacBook Pro. This is just the base model M4. It has a 10-core CPU and a 10-core GPU with 16 gigabytes of memory. One of the biggest advantages of going to the newest MacBook Pro is going to be the display. This display gets up to 1000 nits of peak SDR brightness compared to 500 on the older MacBook Pro. It also gets up to 1600 nits of HDR brightness for HDR content. It has multiple dimming zones to give you increased contrast, plus it has ProMotion to give you up to 120 Hz refresh rate on the display, making everything look smoother and cleaner compared to the older 60 Hz panels. The latest Intel models had 2 or 4 USB-C Thunderbolt 3 ports, and the newest MacBook Pros all have 3 Thunderbolt 3 ports, an HDMI port, an SD card slot, and an audio jack, plus it has a separate port for charging using MagSafe. When it comes to battery life, the original battery life of this 16-inch MacBook Pro was up to 11 hours of video streaming. Apple says that the newest MacBook Pros get up to 24 hours of video streaming, which means you're going to get through a full day for most regular work, no problem. Now, when it comes to software updates, we are 4 years into the transition from Intel to Apple Silicon, which means that macOS 10 updates are probably living on borrowed time, which means you probably need to upgrade to a newer model in order to keep receiving the newest macOS updates. It's possible macOS Sequoia could be the last upgrade for Intel Macs, but maybe they'll get one more year, maybe 2, who really knows at this point. Also, the old MacBooks won't get any of the features of the newest Apple Intelligence stuff that's coming to the MacBooks, like email summaries and writing tools and Genmoji and all of that stuff. So those are just some of the differences. So let's go ahead and start some benchmarks and see how these two computers perform side by side. And remember, this is one of the best Intel-based MacBooks. So if you have a previous generation, a smaller MacBook, a 13-inch, or an i5 or an i3 processor, MacBook Air, all of these results are going to be much worse than what you're going to get on this laptop right here. But we also want to test the battery at the same time, so we will go ahead and disconnect the power from both of these machines and see how far we get on battery. So the first thing we're going to do is check Geekbench 6, which runs a bunch of tests in the background to simulate everyday regular computer use. So go ahead and start that benchmark and see what the results look like. And there we go, we have the results, and the fans on the 16-inch did spin up for just a couple of seconds, maybe about 30 seconds, and this M4 MacBook Pro was completely silent. The M4 got a single core score of 3870 versus 1457 on the 16-inch, or about 170% faster. The M4 MacBook Pro is about 170% faster. And with multi-core, it's the same story, about 15,000 compared to 5,700, or again, around 160, 170% faster. Now, like I said, your models may differ, and this is the base M4 MacBook Pro. So if you go with the M4 Pro or the M4 Max, those are going to be about 19,000 and about 25,000 respectively, compared to, again, 5,700. And with Geekbench Metal, the M4 is about 78% faster compared to the AMD 5300 in this old MacBook Pro. But as you probably know, most older Intel-based MacBooks did not have dedicated GPUs. They relied on the built-in integrated Intel GPU on the processor, like the Intel UHD 630. And where this M4 is about 78% faster than the 5300, it's about 840% faster than the integrated GPU inside this MacBook. And the results are even crazier when you move to the M4 Pro or the M4 Max, which is 1,500% and 3,000% respectively. And now we're going to move to Cinebench 2024, and during this test, we'll also get a temperature reading of these two machines, and we'll go ahead and take a listen to the fans on each one. So we're about 5.5 minutes into this first test, and the M4 has completed its first round and is starting its second. We are nowhere near completing the first round on the 16-inch Intel i5. But let's go ahead and get some temperature readings. It looks like on the 16-inch MacBook Pro, the hottest part is wow, around 45 degrees Celsius right on the keyboard, right where you're going to be typing and using your hands. And then, of course, you can see it coming out the back around 38, 40 degrees or so. And then on the M4 MacBook Pro, the hottest part is coming out of the vents. It's about 42 degrees, and on the keyboard, it's about 36. So a little bit more tolerable heat around the keyboard on the M4 compared to the old Intel i7. And if we check the bottom of the computer, it's running around 44, 45 degrees Celsius on the bottom of the laptop. So that is going to be quite toasty on your legs. And the bottom of the base M4 MacBook Pro is around 32, 34 degrees Celsius. And in the room right now, it's around 20 degrees Celsius or around 70 degrees or 69 degrees Fahrenheit. As far as fan noise goes, the 16-inch MacBook Pro has a louder fan and a little bit higher whine to it. See if you can hear that. And then compare that to the M4 MacBook Pro. Okay, these Cinebench tests take forever. The i7 was only able to complete one render of each test, and it took way more than 10 minutes each. And the M4 was able to complete multiple in that 10-minute span or whatever. The M4 got a multi-core score of 1011 versus 423. So kind of the same as Geekbench, about 170% increase. And it got 173 for a single core compared to 69 for a single core on the i7, which makes it about 140 or so percent faster. Now we're going to run the GFX Bench metal test, and on the i7, we're going to be using the dedicated AMD Radeon Pro GPU, and we'll use, of course, the 10-core GPU on the M4 over here. We'll run the Aztec Ruins high tier, which should push both of them to their limits, so let's see what that looks like. And the M4 got off to an early lead, but side by side, they both look pretty good to me. They both look fluid enough, even though the frames per second may not be the same. They both look completely watchable or even playable. After a closer look, it looks like the graphics on the i7 and the AMD are a little bit softer. Like they're not quite as detailed as they are on the M4, so that's interesting. And we end up with a score of about 90 frames per second on the M4 compared to 40 frames per second on the i7 and the AMD. So 40 frames per second may not be the best, but it was playable. But if you try and use an integrated GPU on the Intel machines, on this Intel UHD 630, I got about 5 frames per second, completely unplayable. The gaming performance was really similar when using the Shadow of the Tomb Raider benchmark, with the MacBook Pro M4 getting around 42 frames per second and the i7 getting around 37. However, there were some moments when the i7 would stutter for multiple seconds at a time, which is odd because the game came out in 2018 and this high-end MacBook Pro came out in 2019. The M4 MacBook Pro is also capable of games that use ray tracing to give you even better graphics performance. During my testing with Resident Evil 4, I found no issues with gameplay at all. No drop frames, no stuttering, everything just worked very smooth. However, this game is not even an option to play on the i7 MacBook Pro. All right, let's do a quick battery check. We're about an hour into the test on both of these machines. On the i7 16-inch MacBook Pro, we're at 46% and we're at 84% on the M4. The M4 is definitely more efficient compared to the i7 and the AMD graphics. Now we're going to test out Xcode on both of these machines. This is using the Xcode benchmark you can find on GitHub, and I'll leave a link in the description below. It's going to tell us how long it takes to build this project in seconds. So we'll go ahead and start. 3, 2, 1, go. And there we have it. On the M4, the fans never kicked on at all. It completed in 141 seconds. With the i7 MacBook Pro, the fans kicked on almost immediately. They were quite loud, basically through the whole process. They're still running right now, and the test completed in 401 seconds. So the M4, again, quite a bit faster at Xcode build than the i7. Let's move on to some creative graphics testing. We'll start with Affinity Photo, we'll do a Davinci Resolve benchmark, and then I'll show you actual Final Cut Pro performance. So we're going to use Affinity Photo 2's built-in benchmark to test the CPU and GPU for vector performance and rasterization and a whole bunch of things I don't actually understand, and be able to compare them against each other. So we'll go ahead and start that benchmark. And the results of the version 25,000 benchmark on these two machines is that the M4 is about 3 times faster or more than 3 times faster in single core vector and more than twice as fast in multi-CPU vector. With raster, it is more than twice as fast. With single GPU based raster, actually the AMD held its own, 12,151 versus 16,049. So the built-in AMD processor or GPU on the older MacBook Pro actually does pretty well with some tasks on photo editing or Affinity Photo 2. So if photo editing is your game, then the M4 is still going to be better than your previous Intel-based MacBook. To test Davinci Resolve, we're going to be using the Geekbench system, which tests encoding and decoding of different codecs, along with some fusion tests as well to test out the graphics performance. This definitely beat up the Intel machine, but did give us a score of 3,525 compared to 5,908, and it did wear down the battery quite a bit, so we're at 12% battery on the 16-inch versus 75% on the M4, and it's time to go ahead and plug in the 16-inch so it doesn't die during the rest of our tests. So now we're going to actually try out some real Final Cut Pro video or projects. And what I have here is my iPhone 14 Pro Max versus my iPhone 16 Pro Max video from a couple of weeks ago. I want to see what the timeline feels like. I want to see what the export looks like. But first I want to show you what we're working with here. We have a number of layers here. We have separate audio layers. We have this multi-track layer that I'll show you in a minute. We have B-roll clips up on top. We have some text and we have some zoom effects and some other things. So it should be a pretty good project. Right now, all of the data is unrendered. There's nothing pre-rendered, so it's going to be adding all the colors adjustments on the fly. This multicam that I have down here switches between 1, 2, 3 different layers, and each one has a color grade and lighting changes and whatnot on that. So it's actually quite a bit on here, quite a bit to process for this Final Cut Pro project. And both of these are set to better quality playback performance, as opposed to better performance, which means that it's working hard to actually do all of this on the fly. So if we kind of just start scrolling over here on this side with the 16-inch, you see that moving around the cursor, it's just kind of jumping around. Nothing is very fast. Over here, as we move the cursor, it's updating like right away. Now let's just go ahead and zoom in on the timeline and see how fast it kind of renders the timelines. We'll just zoom into both here. And the M4 is definitely quicker at creating those thumbnails than the 16-inch is. But let's just go ahead and hit play and see what that looks like performance-wise. So no delay at all when hitting the spacebar on the M4. A slight delay on this guy. And you can kind of see that this is kind of choppy as it's moving along versus on the M4. Now let's see some zoom effects and whatnot and see how that affects the performance. So you can see just on the timeline, the time code is very, very choppy on the 16-inch versus a very smooth time code on the M4. And as it moves in, you can see that it's just kind of stuttering trying to move in. It's not smooth, just trying to do that Ken Burns zoom in effect. And you can see over here, I'm getting the error about dropped frames during the playback on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. Interestingly, the longer that we have this project open on the 16-inch i7, the more choppy it's kind of getting. It's having trouble. It's struggling to actually keep up with me now. So hitting play to start the playback is taking multiple seconds before it starts playing. It's instantly choppy. So the performance of the 16-inch of this old Intel MacBook Pro is not great with this project in Final Cut Pro. So there are, of course, ways to help that. You can create proxies. You can pre-render things in the background before playing. So there's things you can do to speed up the 16-inch MacBook Pro. But if you want the fastest workflow where you can just import your footage, apply grades, and edit as you go along without worrying about performance issues, the M4 is going to provide that. Next up, we're going to be doing an export test. We are going to export this video, which is 15 minutes and 30 seconds long. The M4 processor in the newest MacBook Pro also has a media engine built in, which has dedicated parts of the CPU to encoding and decoding video, which will definitely speed up the process of the export on the M4 compared to the 16-inch, which has to brute force it with its CPU and GPU. And there we go. The M4 MacBook Pro with its media engine exported the video in 8 minutes and 45-ish seconds compared to the 16-inch i7, which exported in 27 minutes and 40-ish seconds. So more than 3 times longer to export the video on the 16-inch i7 versus the M4 MacBook Pro. And if you want to compare that against the M4 Max, which has double the encode-decode engines, it's about half the speed that the regular M4 took, so maybe around 5 minutes or so. Okay, so that's it for the benchmarking tests. Let's go through a couple more things that you do on your computer on a regular basis, just to see how the performance stacks up, to see if there's any difference in regular, non-creative workflows. The first thing we're going to do is just install a couple of apps from the App Store. So we have Microsoft Excel and PowerPoint. We're just going to go ahead and install both of these and see how fast that goes on each one. And now both apps are downloaded and installed on the M4, and neither are fully complete on the i7 just yet. It's going to take probably another 30, 40 seconds. And as we're finishing up the install on PowerPoint on the i7, which overall has taken a couple minutes longer than the M4 to do the install of these two programs, this guy is heating up very fast. It's very hot, and the fans are coming on just about full speed at this point, just installing a couple of apps from the App Store. So let's go ahead and open up a couple of applications and see how that goes. So we clicked open on both of them. This one's up and running. That one is too. Let's go and open up, let's say, Notes. Okay, Notes is open. And what about Calendar? We'll do Calendar. And we'll do Chrome. So Chrome is open on both. And we'll do Safari. And with Safari, we're actually going to go into this tab group that I have here. I have a bunch of open tabs, so we can kind of fly through these different tabs to see how fast they can load. So let's just pick one of these here. Let's say this Reddit tab right here, and we'll tap on it for both. And the M4 was just a little bit faster. Let's go to The Verge. Oh, we are already on The Verge. Let's choose something else. How about Gmail? So Gmail opens a little bit faster on the M4. So it seems like the M4 is just a tiny bit faster in switching between these tabs. Let's go ahead and open them all up, hitting Control and Tab. Now we can just go from tab to tab and see how fast they load. So that's Google Docs, Google Sheets, Gmail. So overall, the speed of opening up these sites is not too bad on the i7. It's opening up pretty quick. So that's a good sign. But it definitely is hotter. I can feel the keyboard under my fingers, and it's quite a bit warmer. So great. So basic tab switching is just fine. And I think I have, yeah, I got a benchmark over here. So go ahead and do the speedometer test. And this is supposed to give us an idea of how fast Safari can render pages on these machines. So we'll go ahead and hit start. So according to the speedometer 3 test, which checks out or tests a couple of web technologies, we got a score of 46 on the M4 versus 12 on the i7, which means really in general, web apps should perform better on the M4. All right, so I think that's about it. I mean, it looks like for regular everyday tasks, opening up applications, web browsing, word processing, email, office applications, the i7 or older Intel Macs might still be just fine for you, although they are most likely going to be much louder and hotter than what you're going to find on modern Macs. But if your computer is struggling on regular everyday tasks, or it's burning a hole through your lap, or the fans are so loud you can't hear anything, or you want to do video editing or AI or LLMs or whatever, then this is a fantastic time to make the switch from Intel over to Apple Silicon. And the battery life is just incredible. Look at that. After almost 3 hours of making this video and testing a whole bunch of things, I still have 51% battery on this M4 MacBook Pro. And that is just amazing. So anyway, that's about it for this comparison of this i7 MacBook Pro versus the M4 MacBook Pro. What do you guys think about this comparison? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, I want to know, are you still holding on to an Intel Mac? And if so, let me know why. I'm curious. Also, YouTube thinks you're going to love this video right over here, and I think you will too. So hit the thumbs up button if you liked it, hit subscribe if you want, and I'll see you next time.